Sheldon Primus.
Welcome to the Safety Consultant Show with Sheldon Primus, where we blend safety smarts with business brilliance and a pinch of Sheldon's signature wit. Whether you're a safety pro, a fresh-faced consultant, or just safety curious, get ready for a show that'll educate, entertain, and elevate your safety game. Let's dive into the art of consulting with your safety Sherpa himself, Sheldon Primus.
This episode is powered by Safety FM.
Hey everyone, I've got a wonderful show for you guys today. Welcome to our show. Man, I can't believe it's already September. It's like catching up on us, ain't it? But we are not alone today. Today, we actually have a special guest, somebody that I have known for quite a while, former student of mine, everything. He's even been on this show before. Believe he's actually, this might be the most interviewed guest of mine. So let's go into it. You guys could talk to my buddy Allen Woffard.
You mean special ed?
Allen.
Hey, man, I brought home the aluminum in the special ed Olympics, and let me tell you, it was tough competing against those kids. They're brilliant. They're enthusiastic. They're going to go further than me, and I'm back in the States for warranty work right now.
Can you get gold in that?
No, I think copper was the highest I got, but then it got taken back. The guy said I wasn't supposed to remove it from the junkyard. I was supposed to actually pay for it first. So, I'm working on that.
I think I'm going to be like flux metal.
Flux? At least you have some kind of use. I mean, look at the aluminum. I mean, what I'm going to do, hold a beer? Actually, I must be aluminum. I'm kidding. I drink out of glass because I worry about cutting on metal.
First thing I do is drop my cup on my pants on air.
That was a beautiful catch by your pants. That was beautiful. Don't lose any of it, brother.
If I hadn't said it before, we're talking to Allen Woffard, Diary of a Bald Man. Allen has been part of my life for now a long time.
Well, brother, like I've said previously, you're the one that got me actually started into podcasting. Talking to you, where you were formerly my teacher, and I say formerly because it's been, Lord, almost 10 years. Well, yeah, it's coming up on like 8 years now. And you were younger, and that one hair that you did have on top of your head, that inspired me to keep growing. But yeah, I think, what is this, our third show together, our third recording together?
I think we've been on each other's podcast a few times now. It's been fun seeing your development and growth.
Yes.
Think about my tree of people I've reached as an instructor. We have kind of like a web of influence among many countries. We've got quite a bit of circle of influence. Yeah, just from our instructing,
You can't see me blushing. Unfortunately, my desktop does not have a camera. But yeah, it's pretty red right now. To give you a good idea, you were the root for all of us that grew. Everybody says, well, this person was a seed. No, I was already a seed. I didn't have a foundation when I got into safety. I really didn't. And being on the construction side and working with a lot of people, not in the oil and gas, but the chemical industry, because we were building an ammonia plant at the time. But where everything started, and, I got into your class, and that was a week of hell. Not because of you, but because, while I was trying to study and get all the intel and all the information that you were giving us, I'd get calls from work and things like that. But one of the things, like I said, I had the seed for safety. I'd never planned on it. When I left law enforcement, I thought I'll be a government contractor. I'll put a Band-Aid on people if they need it, travel and do all this. But then when it bit me and I got the bug, because I'd been working in hazardous materials for the military up in Alaska, and I came stateside to do the project. I was talking to a guy on the site, and he said, Alan, you got to take the cost thing. If you're going to keep building ammonia plants and you're going to be doing your hazardous materials, you got to see the foundation that created some of these rules that you understand. And so I got into your class, and you bought us that amazing fried chicken, and I was in love. If there's a bromance right now, I'll propose to you tomorrow, but you're getting ready to go overseas, and I don't want to duck all the swings by your wife. But in that class, when you first gave us the test to see where we was at, to me, that was genius. Where was I at? I was nowhere near where I am now, but you were the catalyst for 100% of that. And then when we got into the podcast, this is the third year of being on the People's Choice Podcast Award as one of the top 10. And during the International Podcast Day, all that I attribute to you. You took the time, and a couple others from the old, what were they called? And I hate to say this because they were one of the first shows too, the Safety Justice League. You guys got my voice out there. I had people asking me, hey, would you say diabetes? I said, oh yeah, I'll say diabetes. They said, will you grow your mustache longer and your hair longer? You were the catalyst for two different, inspiring moments for my life, Sheldon. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. You remember the Safety Justice League? Jason, Abby, the crew?
Yeah. Jason Maldonado, he helped out a lot because he would ask questions of people when he was building up his stuff. But, that helped us to look and research it too, Same thing when I was trying to find a good way to remove some of the sound when I was on the island. They said, Alan, use that Adobe podcast thing, and it filters out a lot of the stuff, but it would clip, some of the notes where we'd say things. But that inspiration you gave for me to research and do better each time, that was huge. It's still huge. So I can imagine what your today's students and the other people that you mentored, I can only imagine the significance, of your mindset, your abilities, the things you taught us being spread globally. I mean, because some of those guys now, like one of the guys that was in our class, he's working overseas, and I think it's government contracting. And I know for a fact he had like 5 or 6 of them get into the COSM program. I couldn't tell you who the teacher was. I'd have to ask him next time I talked to him. But I mean, you have a global reach, dude. You're better than the pandemic. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got sick. The only shots we took were after work, and that's an adult-sized one. So
no mask required unless there is a hazard.
Right, exactly. I mean, your common sense approach is now global.
Thank you. I was trying to tell people you don't have to suspend your common sense. You don't have to be textbook when you're delivering your program and your training. You don't need to be so technical you throw people off.
Yeah.
I try to get the students to put themselves in certain situations. How does it feel? Visualize what will happen if they get susceptible or succumb to a hazard. Just kind of like visualize things as they happen,
Yeah. But
I wanted to ask you about your podcast.
No, don't. If you have common sense, do not do that. Listen to Sheldon's podcast, but yeah.
Everyone right now, you need to look up Diary of a Bald Man wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's why so many people have like mental health issues right now. They keep listening to podcasts and said, I had a good day, then I turned this crap on and listened to Alan ramble, and I think he was drunk at 2 episodes. It was actually 5. It was not my fault. I did not pour that wine. Somebody else did and stuck it in front of me and said, go. I think it was supposed to be water, but you know how things just transition. They said hydrate. But yeah, brother, again, any accolades, any type of awards I've got, it was not just me. Like I said, I had a seed. I had an idea of what I wanted to do with the dragging up, and it didn't go well. Then when I started doing this, the life lessons you gave us, and other great people. But again, you were the root. You was like, it's okay to grow. It's okay to branch out into other areas, but keep your base the same. Think about human safety, your environmental safety, things like that. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons now with my podcast, I had a disclaimer made saying, hey, don't do anything this man says until you get checked by a physician. I'll reiterate numerous times, check with your primary care physician, check with Sheldon Primus, check with, this individual or that, because it's not for everybody. And you are for everybody.
Somebody did listen to your advice. You're award winning. You gave me JR, the voice of the podcast. I'm forever grateful.
JR is excellent. Yeah, we worked together on Shemya Island in Alaska. So if you hold up your hand and stick your thumb left and you went to the end of your thumb, that's kind of where Shemya is, 1,400 miles away from Anchorage. But he was one of the safety guys. I forget the name of the company he was working with because I think they got bought out. But we worked on an Air Force facility, and he was a safety. And when we came back stateside, we kept in touch, because before that, he worked in the oil fields. He worked as a DJ. He was a musician. Then he came back stateside, somewhere up in Illinois area, and he was busy. He went to Wake Island, where I was at back in 2005 to 2007, came back stateside. And yeah, he's got an amazing voice. When we were doing the podcast with him and Betty, people loved it, and they were like, we enjoyed that, the way that we'd just kind of go after one another, and he would just drop his humor and everything, and people enjoyed that. And then he had that serious side that when he had to flip the coin, he brought in safety and the relevance and the importance of not just going into it physically, but emotionally as well. He had the voice that people would remember.
He's got such a great voice.
Yes, he did.
Allen is dedicated to veterans. If you did not know this, so much so that he's a minister to veterans. If you need someone to talk to that doesn't judge, Allen is your man.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, and I'm glad you brought that up, Sheldon. We think about the 22 a day, and the actual number is probably up in the 40s or 50s. One of the reasons insurance companies bring that up too, because a lot of people say 22, and it's like, no, statistically it's higher because a veteran may disappear. There's so many that are homeless right now, especially out in areas, California, Oregon and stuff. But some of that was to change their mindset. They wanted to get out of paying bills and worrying about losing their house again and, being tied down because their mind is somewhere else. And yeah, if you Google my name, Allen Woffard, and you'll see ordained.com, it has the profile, the contact stuff. I've had calls from law enforcement, veterans, paramedics. I think there was a time or two when I don't want to say they were a nurse because they could have been something a lot more elevated. But just the stress because where I had PTSD and I almost took my own life, not because of the PTSD, but some other circumstances when I was on Wake Island that I put into the podcast. And I was sitting on that beach with that weapon in my mouth, preparing to unalive myself. And one of the Thai workforce came by and started pushing it further into my mouth and said, do it. And I broke down. I resigned from law enforcement the very next day, got the next flight out, and never looked back. It was a tough period. I had to do psychological evaluation. You never want to say, I just got chest pain, so it's indigestion. Well, with mental health, you don't want to do that too. You want to talk to somebody. And what they found out, I was truly not suicidal, but there were some conditions because I tried to stop smoking. And I'm not going to say the name of the material on here because it really does help other people. But with my mindset at the time and being on the island and some of the conditions I was facing stateside, being away from the family, it put me into a mental state where I did not sleep for 3 days and exacerbated. And they said, well, you got PTSD, but you're not suicidal. If you had, you would have taken the opportunity in other events and it would have looked like an accident and things like that. But yeah, I wish back then I had somebody to talk to like that. And that's what started that. When I got to Alaska and I was working with JR on Shemya, I'd have numerous people that come up and talk to me because we had security clearances. They wouldn't tell me anything secret, but that way, when they were discussing, hey, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, and I just feel bad, and I heard that you attempted to do this, and talked them off the edge. And I'm not a counselor. It's just sometimes you need somebody to listen to. And that's why I got ordained. And it was just because in certain areas, people are like, I don't want to talk to somebody that's going to tell everything to, and so in their mindset, talking to a priest or a pastor or something, that's somebody, it's from you. God's listening. God already knows what's going on. But they have somebody tangible that they could see and hold a hand and maybe even cry or get a hug from. So that's how that got started, Sheldon. And nobody's ever asked me that before. I appreciate you mentioning that.
Thank you for that. With my students, I've been seeing a lot of police officers that are brand new to safety. I mean, they still got the fresh safety smell.
Yeah.
And it seems like their transition is maybe a step for their own mental health. I like to think that, the thing that they offer to us in our industry is the security side. Since there's been a lot of scope creep with safety and security, someone who is in law enforcement, they're actually, already attuned to safety. So early security, they're going to learn the safety discipline, but it's honestly a perfect fit.
Right.
Yeah, this is a trend in EHS. You can see it with even the emergence of ISO 45003. That's the workplace guidance for psychological safety. For those of you that don't know, it's the right thing to do for the employees, right? Back in the day, you used to tell the workers to leave their problems at the gate, but science has told us that you can't do that.
I was, and some of the officers from the safety professional site that I talked to on the side, I said, what created that segue for you into safety? And they said workplace violence. So were they asking a lot of consultants to go in and give classes on workplace violence? When I became an active shooter trainer a couple of years back, some of the clients I work with said, oh, great, you've got a previous law enforcement experience. Now you have this experience. Would you give classes on it? And so I said, yeah, but the thing is, I could give you a class, but if you guys don't actually get a program in place and educate your employees, it's not going to work. Everybody just kept thinking about all the active shooter events, but then they wanted safety and security to do this, but they didn't empower their human resources teams or their supervisors, to take action, because it's like, well, the pandemic hurt us. We lost a lot of good people. Now we got these new people in. And with that cycle, they didn't want them to feel like, okay, why am I taking a workplace violence class? You didn't have an event. Are you assuming I'm the violent one? And so HR was like, yeah, don't do these things. Don't do PCPs and, don't do all these things that would be active, countermeasures, because we're worried it will scare the employees. And it's actually necessary, but companies don't want to empower it for fear of losing people out of an assumed danger. And we actually do need more information, because it's a bad state now where we have, I'm not going to say drug abuse, but we have a lot of veterans in the workplace now that'll come up to me and say, hey, Allen, can you do Narcan training for my coworker? And without violating HIPAA, they're like, I want them to have training because I'm on so many meds from my injuries while in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, wherever. I'm taking it if I overdose, and it's happened in numerous establishments, having somebody to train on that. So now it's fearful for some employers. It's like, why didn't you tell us you were taking this? And it's like, well, I told HR, but I want somebody to do it because accidents happen. So the work environment's changed. There is more violence, but also a ton more elderly having to come back to work because of the cost of living. I've seen people my dad's age, 70s, 80s, and you're like, hey, Timer, what are you doing in here? And it's like, trying to keep my daggum lights on, or I'm trying to feed my wife, or my blood pressure medication, insurance stopped paying it because I'm retired. So I had to go back to work to get my blood pressure meds. So we've got an elderly workforce. God bless you if you're listening, because I know you're listening, Sheldon. But, thank you for maintaining and getting in there and being part of the community. But you got the elderly workforce. You've got a lot of guys recovering from both PTSD, other traumas in the workforce, trying to help people. And, then you've got another generation that are so electronically driven that I wish you could see the video. I was going to say it's private, but I'll ask the guy to send it. He was an insurance investigator wondering why this one company had so many traumatic brain injuries. And I was like, are they true TBIs? And you look at the surveillance thing in their warehouse where people are walking through the warehouse looking down and then slam into either a forklift or a piece of steel and stuff. And it was like, you've got to be kidding me. So there's so many distractions out there too, Sheldon.
Symptoms of poor performance would be like looking down, hitting your head on the forklift, like you just said. The worker gets written up for that, but they're not really addressing that underlying problem, or it could be an underlying problem, right?
Oh, and I'm glad you put that in there too, Sheldon. One of the things I've seen a nice trend and a nice buildup on, companies with their insurance providers will walk through, and the insurance provider will have safety training. A lot of them will have like 10 or 30 hours so they can identify what OSHA might potentially ding their clients on, especially on a risk awareness or risk management visit. But what I've seen growing in popularity is like if I came to you and I was going to a water plant and I'd say, Sheldon, sodium hypochlorite, all these different chemicals that may be used in water. What is the most dangerous? Which one do you have to have, really good training on? Chlorine gas, things like that. But they're going to the people like, welders and stuff in a shop and saying, what was the worst fire you ever saw? What created that? And they may say, hey, I had paperwork over here. I was on my plans and diagrams, and, a piece of slag got onto and ignited it. And so we start putting Lexan and things on. And the mental health thing is still the same way too. What's causing you the greatest stress? And they were going in, I think it was probably about 2 months before I went to Kwajalein. I was reading a report that a guy had done, and he found stress in this one metal shop where guys were getting violent was due to the frequency of when the equipment was cutting the material. They had hearing protection, but they found out that by modifying it and giving them earmuffs instead of just the inserts and doubling up on their hearing pro, that tension, that stress and everything just completely dissipated for a few people. But then other people were like, the noise just, it gets into me and I get mad when people come in. So they put up panels because they were listening to experts on noise reduction, but they don't look at a subject matter expert like you in all areas. They're like, oh man, the smell's bad. It's got to be hydrogen sulfide everywhere. Well, the potential exists, but with some of these new industrial hygienists I'm seeing that figured out that noise panel, that figured out what was triggering these guys respond, they went in and developed a new program where they're even looking at lighting. So they switch companies at night, or help companies, and they pay for this. They put in SAD lights because night shift workers very seldom see any daylight. So their vitamin D levels and their emotional stuff changes. But yeah, by simply listening and reaching out to others, it's amazing what we can find out to help, not just with physical safety, but emotional safety as well.
Now, we in safety and health for so long didn't think about the complete person, including their mental health. We've been ignoring body chemistry and accident, how cortisol was released, and you're trying to tell someone to talk to you about something and you badger them about talking about an accident because you need to do your investigation, and literally they can't speak up because of that high cortisol level and no oxytocin to balance that out. We may think that the person is trying to hide things, and they write them up because, they're not talking to the investigator and not really considering about the whole person, the chemistry. And that's like, you have to think about everything, the age, the generations, all that stuff is part of the full person. You even have to adjust safety messages with, just generationally. Some people might like to get micro messages such as text if it's intrinsically safe, or some people might just like to read something in a newsroom on like a newsletter or something. So that's generational based. It's what makes that person truly feel like you're listening to them and you know them in their generations.
Well, see, I like how you incorporated the various generations. One of my clients, they have an older generation that does a lot of the workshop stuff, and people, you go in there and their newsletter is poster size. And when people say, why is it so big? It's like, well, Alan's half blind. He's 70. Look at his glasses. They're thick. Yeah. So they're like, we're modifying what we're producing because, like you said, I don't know if they're reading these things. So they'll go to Staples. Staples, you guys did a great job. Thank you for that. And they made just large sheet posters, and people are going up, and when they read it, they'd sign it to the side, and it was nice to see that because they listened to why, hey, did you read this? No, I can't see it. Look at the font, look at the print, and when I was doing classes, 2022, after the pandemic thing kind of relaxed a little bit, we was getting back out into the classes, and I was using the projector, and I'm looking at the words and stuff, and I made sure it was large enough, and then I had some people say, I can't read that. And I was like, why? And it says, well, your company format, those blues and those grays, we can't see it. It looks fuzzy to us. So I stopped using the company's thing. I went to my boss. I said, look, when I'm training with these two groups, these people with this condition in their office, I took pictures of it so they could see. I used an actual old Polaroid camera so they could see it wasn't modified. Then I took digital photos, and I said, look at this. It really does, from their perspective, look grainy, stuff like that. I had to use sharper colors, darker contrast enough. So you're right, brother, with the variations. The younger guys, too, if you do a PowerPoint, they're sleeping. So once I learned how to incorporate a video into a PowerPoint, I'm getting over the keynotes, the bullet points, then the video captures their attention. Then we go on to the next thing, because the attention span, after 15 minutes, they're shutting you down on training. Unless you break it up. And like you did in our classes, you're like, oh, let's talk about, this. Let's talk about BBS. Let's talk about this. And you incorporated everything. Oh, a guy fell. Was it his behavior? Was it the environment? Did he have bad fall protection? Did Allen push him because it was his coffee? Why did this occur?
You have to think about all variables. It's like a scientific thing for us, Yeah, it's one of those things where you got to do the if-then scenarios, and you test things out, right?
Oh, say it, brother. Preach it. No, because we're talking. I kid you not, brother. I get some people going, well, Alan, your podcast is not office friendly. I said, well, you should be listening to the office. They're paying you to work, not listen to me. But they're like, you just say what's on your mind. I said, because my generation expects that, and it's not to be crass or rude. I was like, there's certain things that trigger, I remember that, or this is how I respond to this. But a lot of the veterans that I get emails and the postcards and stuff from go, love your sarcasm, but love how you're trying to do this too for people that are not sensitive. Not to say they're not, empathetic to people being sensitive to certain things, but directness and being truthful to the best of your ability, because sometimes you can't tell everything. Same thing when I was on the island. Had a good day. Can't say anything about the stuff because it's like it may create a mental strain on the family or coworkers, because it was like, I didn't know we had that kind of hazard. Nobody expected that rogue wave in January to go over Roy and, try to push everybody off the island. Sometimes things happen. And they're like, well, why can't you tell me what happened? It's like, nature happened. Sheldon spilled his coffee a minute ago, not because Sheldon's a klutz, and not to be disrespectful, brother. You couldn't spill coffee if you didn't have coffee. Our environment and the situations, it's like, oh man, that hurt. Well, if you hadn't had coffee, it wouldn't hurt. If you don't take a chance, sometimes you won't learn. You won't grow. If you don't let people know you have shortcomings, and that's one thing I loved about Sheldon's class. When he was talking to somebody, getting the cortisol levels up, stuff like that, the very first thing the man trained us on, outside of the, behavior-based safety, was when we're looking at the individual, look at the individual. Hey, man, how did you fall? No. How are you doing? What can I get for you? Do I need to get a medic? Do I need to take you here? He was letting them know that he was, something more than capital that's on a spreadsheet that's part of a process. Sheldon taught us how to approach a person while we're interviewing them. It's not like, what were you doing before you fell? Well, obviously you were in upright position, something like that. He taught us to say, how are you? Can I get you anything? Do you need something? And approach the person with empathy and respect. Not, oh, great, I got to do another 10 hours of paperwork.
Thank you for saying that. People first, always. So you got to lead with empathy.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And see, one of the when you were teaching us, the mentality to me came out, that princess in the pea, where there's a pea at the base of her bed and all those mattresses go up, and she was still uncomfortable. But that's the way I look at people in an organization. If there's something in there that's unsettling, it's going to affect everybody. No matter how many times you distance yourself, how much barriers you put in between, it has an effect on an individual. And we don't think about some of those really small things, that's a part of life, but it does have an impact. And especially on the sensitive people, they'll get to that a lot. But, with your teaching and the stuff you trained us, it wasn't cost. The program itself was exceptional. But you trained the individual. You took us and said, you're not a safety cop, put your pen down, but take notes, focus on what's being said, then take this, engage, and people just don't look at it. They look at individuals and incidents and say it's a one-time thing. Let me do, a fishbone diagram. Let me figure out where this all went down.
Look at you with a fishbone diagram.
Yeah. And they're probably going, well, I use Taproot now. It's like, Jesus. You got to go old school, because technology, I was telling Sheldon earlier, I can throw my podcast into an AI and it generates a script. Well, that's the thing. I don't want to replace my own mental capabilities and physical things with artificial intelligence, because then it's like, oh, I feel too bored to write this. Let me get AI to do it. And I've seen people do that with safety manuals. They're like, generate a safety manual, put this, because they're applying for insurance, right? And so they want to show they got a better program. And then when I'm looking at it to help them or to guide them on it, it's like, why do you have confined space permit program in here? You don't have any confined spaces. You're a metal fab shop. Or why do you have, this in here, and you guys don't work off elevated platforms. You work on the floor. Let me see your chain hoist. Let me see your stuff where you're holding pipe and moving pipe and you're torching hot work programs and stuff like that. But people think, hey, more is better. And then you expect your people to follow policies, and it's like, why didn't you fill out that permit? What permit? I didn't know we had a hot work permit.
This is the first time I've seen this.
Yeah. But, that's just the thing, brother. People, and AI can be helpful. I'm not saying it's not, because it can create, like Sheldon said, if we're having a hard time thinking of something for a show, I'll say, if you were a person, what would you want to hear? And, it puts humor, it puts, I always say this wrong, anecdotal, anecdotal things and stuff like that. And then we'll search the internet and say, hey, here's what the popular things are with podcasts or shows or what people are listening to. Because I look at a targeted group. Sheldon has to blanket the world because everything under the canopy of safety starts at the top of the tower where the owners are and goes all the way to the ground. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Let me tell you how to make chicken and dumplings, what wine goes best with peanut butter crackers, things like that. Off the wall, because that's going to trigger in your mind, where the hell did you come up with this? And wait a minute, I do enjoy blah, blah, blah. Keep challenging yourself is what I'm saying. Please.
That technique. That's a technique that you just described. You're doing what's called Neurolinguistic Programming. And that's an NLP technique. You get someone that's in some sort of state, and that's their state of mind. So state's like truncated for that, and they're stuck in their story, whatever that story is. So you do something that's going to shake them out of that state, and that's considered an anchoring them. You're anchoring them for the next stage where you start your counseling and you get them to stop their story. And that's how you make your breakthrough. So, yeah, that's that technique you got there is a NLP technique.
Well, brother, one thing, if you have not read it, Mind Hacking Happiness. That is an amazing book that talks about everything psychological. The guy worked with Navy SEALs. He's worked with other things of intelligence, but it talks about his journey when he almost died as a teenager and just the ability of the mind, like you're talking about. You do this to get a response, and then they look, and then you show this color, then you say cloud, and they're like, what the hell? And then it sinks. It just grabs that person's attention. But Mind Hacking Happiness. And it's great too if a person's depressed. If you're listening and you want to figure out how to get out of your own way, that book by Mr. Webb is amazing.
I'll write that down. Hey, let's continue the AI conversation. I've been embracing AI just ethically. Can't use AI without, double checking in the response and everything. Even at one time, when chat first got started, I asked it about OSHA's agriculture standard, and it did not know. So, even though you embrace it, you got to make sure and check it and make sure it's doing what it's supposed to.
That's good, brother. So instead of thinking of it as artificial intelligence, look at it as additional. So it's a support mechanism. It's a tool, and people should use it. I'm just, when I'm talking about clients and stuff that were jumping in on it, trying to develop things instead of having, talking to the people on the floor. Hey, I've got to do a PPE hazards assessment. Why do you keep getting cut? Well, you keep buying sharp damn tools in this place, things like that. And they had one of them that I read was actually really decent about intervention when they're working with minors, because it was like a amusement park type thing. And it actually came up with really good advice, like get parents engaged, get community members engaged. And I was reading it. It was really, really well written. And they actually took it and talked to people at Dollywood and other parks and said, hey, do you guys do something similar? We're looking at a project and had this done by AI. They were completely honest with it. And they said, yeah. And they actually, when they were talking to other people, asked AI models, hey, what's the worst that could happen if I follow this program? And it would actually tell them lawsuits, shutting down, loss of inventory, things like that. And I was like, it even told you how it could possibly be affected.
I've actually used it for a bow tie analysis with the client on a warehousing job. The analysis of the bow tie is in the middle. You've got the trigger event. The analysis is kind of shaped like a bow tie. One side is going to be the things that will cause the event, and the other side are consequences related to it. And then you kind of work out your risk analysis from there. And I actually used the AI to help me, kind of troubleshoot some things I completely forgot, and it helped me, almost like a research assistant, if you would.
Oh no, brother. There's quite a few, and some of the guys I spoke to in our group too that use AI for safety, they're using it for statistical analysis. They're looking at certain things, which this I did not know. You could say, I've got a building 10 stories up. I've got this kind of rope line for the window cleaners. The wind at this point is coming up. What's the potential for injury? And it gave a great estimate. And so they tested it after seeing videos of window washers getting slammed to the side of the building. And the AI told it, go buy pool noodles. And I thought, why would you buy pool noodles? It said, because where it's rubbing and constantly, you can replace it. It's $1 thing. But when they did it, the swing ratio and everything, because it had friction now instead of the other stuff, it worked. They never bounced. The pool noodle would degrade after a week. They replaced it at $1 low cost, and it protected the equipment and the windows. And AI told it to get a pool noodle because it would give them a composition. They were like, where do I get that material at? And can you describe it in a simple term? And it said pool noodle. And he actually sent me the screenshots of where he asked about that. And now they're using it in Nashville on all those window washer systems.
Wow, that's amazing.
Not all of them, but...
Yeah, again, I'm using it as a virtual assistant or a researcher assistant. And, I do have a secret project that I'm working on. So maybe you can help me out with that.
Yeah. Hell yeah, brother. I mean, I asked it, I was trying to impress my wife, and I went into AI and I said, hey, what are some good things for a very short Tennessee woman that's highly intelligent, doesn't like to put up with crap? What can I do to impress her? And it said, move. It was a joke, but I was like, move. And I unplugged it. I unplugged its life support. I said, to hell with you.
That's funny.
Yeah, I was looking for humorous stuff, and it told me to move. Yeah, leave so she can be happy. Ended up on Quadulin. No.
It's only developing, so yeah, we're in the baby stages.
No, I like the idea of testing AI. Do I have fears about it? Yes, because my son took a couple of pictures of me and had AI improve it. And I was like, what do you mean improve? He goes, Dad, just, it changed the facial color of my hair, or not my facial color, but the color of my hair. And I was like, oh, well, that's neat. And my wife was like, oh, that would look good on you, honey. And it did some other things. And I was like, I worried that people take that and it's like, you mean I don't look good the way I am? No, it was just an image thing. It really did look neat. I'll have to send you some of the pictures. But it was amazing how it took my picture and just gave a different view, But then one of the guys I was talking to said, yeah, we use something similar like that for targeting. And I was like, what do you mean by targeting? He goes, we put that into an AI system, look at the cameras across all of our retail outlets, and we could tell if they've been shopping at those places or tracking people that have robbed stores or have a history of it. And they're actually using AI to look at gas stations for a large retail chain to say, hey, see if you keep seeing this, because they kept having some events come up. It would go in one state, then it's 2 states away. So now they're using it to actually track people in stores to see, hey, did this guy rob? Nope, no, he's frequent flyer. He gets fuel here all the time. But it's amazing what they're using it on the back end. We never even think about.
I teach my students how to use the AI now. So let's say we just finished a fall protection session. So after the fall protection session, I'm going to go ahead and have them, I'll write up a little scenario, or I'll have AI write a little scenario. And then we'll review those scenarios. And I just don't have them to give me the answers yet. But we'll kind of review the scenario. The students will troubleshoot, and then we'll put in we'll ask it for a response to, what would you do? And then we match up what the AI comes up, what we did in class. So that's how we've been using it.
Yeah, one of my local clients in Tennessee actually used a ChatGPT. I think it was ChatGPT or OpenAI. I think it's the same thing, to make them a checklist for their fleet of vehicles. They said, we got these types of trucks, we got this. They put a lot of information out to it, but it gave them a very detailed sheet on things to check. And then they put in, these are common failures on our equipment and our perishables. And it picked out, date, it fed it all kinds of information, dates, times. And it came out with a great program. And I forgot, it took them, I think they told me 4 days to put all the information, get responses to it. And then they took all the responses and said, can you pick out our highest date of failure on equipment, tires, whatever. And it picked out like Thursdays around 4 o'clock. I mean, it narrowed it down. And so they looked at their logs that they had from the shop. And it was almost right on top. Yeah, it narrowed it down. And I didn't know you could feed it bits of information, take those answers, ask questions based off those answers, put some more in, and it will give you, final thing. I haven't tested it that far yet.
All right, I have one last question. All right, you yourself, you've been in and out of consulting, and it's been really cool to see how fluid you've been. It's kind of like where sometimes you have your personal client and then sometimes you take on another job. So many people think it's all or nothing when it comes to safety consulting. They believe that you have to if you take on a job, then you fail to be a consultant. You yourself, though, you've truly moved back and forth fluidly between just going where you're needed, not wondering what the label is. Are you labeled as a consultant or you're labeled as an employee? You just go where you're needed. So let everybody know that's secret. How do you do it?
Okay. No, absolutely, Sheldon. So again, when I first got into safety, it was dealing with hazardous materials on the island. And not a lot, some class 8, some class 9 biohazards, things from our hospital and all, nothing inherently dangerous. But when I got stateside, after taking some advanced classes with hazardous materials, I got the job where I was currently working when I took Sheldon's class. But what I'd seen and what benefited me as a consultant is when I was over the project, and I was the senior safety after my friend had left, but he got me in there because of my skills with hazardous materials. So when I set up their lockers and started doing their T-clip test and everything else that they needed to have done to ship waste out of there, other people saw that. So let's say Sheldon was a GC out there. So they would come up and say, hey, we're going to be doing this on another job site. Are you available? I said, no, but I know a guy, same background as me, did hazardous waste transporting. He could figure it out, get it set up, get your Hasdex and everything, and go from there. So then they call me up, Allen, can you do this? And I'll say, yeah, I can do this, but let me help you with this until you get somebody with boots on the ground. So what I do, and the reason it helps me and the reason people keep calling me back is like, if you go into consulting, go in 100%, but you need breaks. And it's not a break from the work because consulting is so important. People need you, but you say, hey, I'm not getting a client. Well, you're just in the wrong area. Or you're focusing because like where I said I was a government contractor doing this, they'll say, well, let me hit all the government contractors. I know all the sites. Well, you're setting a limit then. So what happened, I took Sheldon's training. I got promoted to head of safety for the entire project as a combination, of the work I'd done and stuff like that. But where I really took off and started doing great with the consulting, after that project finished, another company came up and said, Allen, can you do training? So I took a break from the consulting to strictly go out and do training for 5 companies that were trying to get into other projects or build their companies up, things like that. But it built me up too with a reputation. Then I started getting road departments, people they supported as millwrights. They were calling me up saying, hey, can you do this for me? And I do training and consulting. So the biggest thing that saved me from burning out on consulting, one is having a variety of experiences. Like Sheldon came from the water treatment side. With me, I did construction and then hazardous materials. Then I got back into government contracting, then supporting others. But once your name gets out there and they see that you're flexible and you still have that same and dynamic, experiences that you took to other clients, mentally, it's going to help you because you don't feel beaten down. Like when I left consulting to go overseas to work for the government, it was to support my family. A great company, Keystone, just a really good East Coast risk management. But what happened while I was gone is, some of the dynamics changed out here, different types of clients gone, things like that. But when I came back stateside, I'd seen a lot of other guys that had done similar to me come out of different professions, go into consulting, but where they had trouble keeping clients, they focused on a particular set that they were comfortable with. Didn't think about the people like Sheldon, going outside, not just the water treatment plant people, but people that make pumps for the plants, people that build pipes or do, civil work, or they do, I want to say construction on other areas. And by him knowing what's in the water plant, the guys that bring the pumps in, hey, this looks good. How hot does it get? What's RPMs? How can we safely lower this into a lift station? How do we get this into here? And the people that make it, will spread that information. And then Sheldon can take it into other areas. But the success for me is to not focus on one group. Back when I was doing it for myself, before going to East Coast, Keystone, I'd get on the OSHA establishment page, who got hit for like 10 or more issues, then research the company. Based off that information, it's like, hey, did you know a company similar to this? Recover quicker because of training, knowledge, go in, do their SDS binders. Then when I started doing Google-based SDS binders for people, it really took off. I got call after call from local businesses that would look up safety consultant near them. It's like, Alan, can you generate our stuff on a free Google site? Yeah. And they just paid me for the time. Little things like that. But we were talking about use of AI too. Ask AI, hey, I'm a consultant in safety. I focus on this area. What else can I do? It will give you other potential things, but you got to be comfortable with the answers. If you're going to ask, then take those answers, even if it sounds outlandish, and take a chance on yourself.
Oh, that's brilliant. If you're a safety consultant, you should look at all your skills, any of your passions. If you're good at fishing or something, and you could do a charter business, then all right, you've got your safety consulting and your charter business. It doesn't mean that you failed as a safety consultant. Yeah, you just use all of your talents, if you would, to help sustain the family and everything that you need to do.
Yep.
You're your own boss, so there's no real rules to that.
Absolutely, brother. And, it's like about a year ago, one of the nursing home clients I trained some nurses on their annual biannual recertification. And they were like, hey, Alan, have you thought about going to these nursing homes? We got friends that work there. I said, no, go to the red class, get that, because those people, their industry. So when you go in and say, hey, we're going to get a patient out of this bed with a KED, long spine board, whatever, you're going to have that comfort, and it'll make you some extra income. And two of them today are still training, and they thank me all the time. There were some of the ones that sent me postcards or stuff. It's like, I just held my 95th class, and it helped them to build up. You were talking about our web and people that we've touched and the things. They reach out to me. I've got 3 safety people, Drew, Shane, and Dana, that still stay in touch, and they're doing the same thing that you did for us. Spread out knowledge, give out that stuff, and like my nurses friends. But yeah, brother, once you're in consulting, guys, you don't need another job. You want another one because you're thinking, wow, this costs this costs that. No, you're just needing the income. Focus on your consulting. Spread your web out. Quit trying to catch butterflies. Go for dragonflies. Go for fruit flies. Everything will actually lead to something else, and it will build you a better. It'll build you a better, I don't want to say spider web, because now it sounds like we're trapping people. It'll build you a better variety of food, okay? Suck them dry, drop the carcass, go get you another carcass. But remember, be empathetic. Bugs are going to irritate you, but what you're doing is you're feeding the rest of the family. Be honest. Tell them if you can't do something. Don't be afraid to ask for help from another subject matter expert. No, yes, people may want your contract, but don't be afraid that you lose out because you didn't want to ask for help. Get a hold of Sheldon. Sheldon is amazing, for resources and stuff. Ask your coworkers, ask AI. Don't sell yourself short. You can be amazing, but you have to have that ability to say, yep, I'm going to turn left instead of right. And I know that's all gravel, but when I'm done, there's going to be a road paved behind me.
Oh, that's right. Good tips. Wait, tell everybody how to reach you, how to get a postcard.
Leave me the hell alone. I did not ask you to come after me. So, yeah, the postcard, there's a big thing on my website, diary, D-I-A-R-Y, not diarrhea, even though the wife said that's what I usually put out. But diary, D-I-A-R-Y, of a baldman.com. Or you could text me. I get my email, diaryofaBaldman1968 @gmail. That's how I get a lot of stuff from the people that listen worldwide, globally. If you want a postcard, send me your address out there or a post office box. Hell, send me your work address and I'll send you a pair of my socks too. And say, I got these from the bald man himself. And then, that's like a trophy right there. I can't guarantee they'll be clean because I can't really distinguish. But also, if you Google me, Allen Woffard, ALLEN WOFFARD, you'll find other ways to get a hold of me too. It'll actually show you my house here in Tennessee, give you my phone number. What is that? WhatsApp? On WhatsApp. I think it's WhatsApp too. That was great when I was overseas because a lot of foreign people were like, oh, Alan, we can find you a dating service in the middle of the ocean. Leave me the hell alone. I'm happily married. But yeah. Phone number is 910-431-6437. Please feel free to text me. And again, like Sheldon was saying, if you're, asking about being ordained and stuff, if you're in need of something, reach out, talk to somebody. It really helps. You're not as crazy as I'm going to tell you are.
Yes. Allen Woffard, everybody. Thank you, my friend. Everyone's listening.
Yeah, I was sober today, too. I want that.
Allen, you did it. If he could do it, you all could do it, too. All right, gang. Go get him.
That's a wrap for today's safety show. Remember, safety isn't just about hard hats and caution signs. It's about business smarts, too. Thanks for joining us on the Safety Consultant Show with Sheldon Primus. Until next time, stay safe, stay savvy, and keep consulting like a boss. Go get 'em. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast or broadcast are those of the host and its guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within the past hour, only examples. It should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the positions of the company. No part of this podcast or broadcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast or broadcast, Sheldon Primus.
This episode has been powered by Safety FM.
Are you ready to make a difference? Introducing the Safety Consultant Blueprint course. Unlock your potential as a safety consultant. Learn the skills, strategies, and ethics to create safer workplaces for your very own client. From risk assessment to client acquisition, we've got you covered. Become a safety consultant and open doors to being your own boss. Join us and be the hero of workplace safety. Enroll today. Safety starts with you. Take the first step now. Visit our website and enroll in the Safety Consultant Blueprint course. Empower businesses. Protect lives. SafetyConsultantBlueprint.com.